One of the great World Cups recently actually wasn't the one in 2014. It was the one, I think it was last year, the Women's World Cup, where the United States won, and that was absolutely fantastic. Carly Lloyd scored one of the greatest goals I think I've ever seen from about the halfway line. And I mention this because we're celebrating Women's Sports Week this week, and I want to get a little bit more into this today. So I've got a guest from Women in Sport today. It is Nicola Miller. Nicola, welcome to the show. Nicola is the Director of Campaigns and Engagement for Women in Sport. So Nicola, simple questions to begin with. What exactly is Women's Sports Week?
Women's Sport Week is about raising the profile and celebrating everything that's fantastic and successful about women's sport, which we don't generally do enough of. I mean, you talk about the Women's World Cup for football, which is a really great example of a fantastic tournament that everyone got behind. The audience figures shot up. There was way more media coverage. There was TV coverage. But that, unfortunately, is not the norm. It's not the everyday. And I think, unlike with men's sport, where you find it is such a normal part of society, you open up any newspaper this morning, and in spite of it being Women's Sport Week, it's dominated entirely by men's sport media coverage. Only 7% thereabouts of media coverage is for women's sport compared to men's, which is a huge difference. And what Women's Sport Week is about, partially, is about celebrating all the great things about women's sport. I mean, think about Rio was only a few weeks ago, and there was just as much women's sport, and we got as excited about the women as we did about the men. We really like to see that continuing, that momentum, and happening more and more.
Exactly. I've got Heather Stanning coming on my podcast, The Best in the World with Richard Parr, so we're really going to enjoy listening and learning from her. And what other sports stars have you got involved in Women's Sports Week this week?
Well, Women's Sport Week is mostly about actually going out and getting sports clubs, sport organisations, national governing bodies to stand up and do something for Women's Sport Week, whether it's putting forward an ambassador, a sports star, an athlete, and having them talk about Women's Sport Week, or it's putting on an event, or just really promoting what they're doing to engage more women and girls in playing sport. At Women in Sport, which is the charity I work for, and we're leading on this campaign, we have Rebecca Adlington, one of our patrons, who is really behind us on Women's Sport Week as well. And if you go to some of the other media broadcasters, so two of our partners on this, BBC and also Sky Sports, have dozens and dozens of famous faces and people behind the scenes in women's sport talking this week on their websites and on their channels about women's sport. So it's the whole community, from the elite level to grassroots to coaches to local clubs to individuals. We're getting everyone to talk about and shout about it using the hashtag WSW16.
Well, it's great to get those massive media companies on board, and also Sportuccino today as well, Nicola.
Yes, of course.
Maybe you could explain tell some of our viewers, if they wanted to get involved in any of the events this week, some of the events which you've had so far and you've also got coming up.
Well, we've got people. What we've had asked is for every level of club and organisation to come forward and tell us what they're doing. So we're sharing those opportunities via our Twitter, which is at womeninsport_UK. You can go to womensportweek.org and find out what's happening on there. On the BBC Get Inspired site, they've got a calendar and activator where they've got some activities on there as well. But mostly go to Twitter for us and follow the hashtag WSW16. And everybody who's doing anything for Women's Sport Week will be telling you about it on there and keen for you to get down and see what they're up to. So if you're interested in Rounders, for example, if you Google what Rounders are doing at Rounders England, they'll tell you all the different activities they've got going on this week, and you can go and find out how to get involved.
Well, that's great. Well, you've been involved with Women in Sport as the Director of Campaigns and Engagement. How did you first get involved with Women in Sport, and what's been your favourite moment so far?
I joined Women in Sport almost 2 years ago now, and it's been a real journey. It's been a fantastic one. And for me, I think at the heart of it for me is that I was never a sporty girl. There are lots of sporty girls out there, but there are lots of sporty girls who don't feel that sport's for them. I never felt sport was for me when I was growing up. It wasn't something I had any interest in, really. And it was only really in my sort of as an adult that I started to kind of get interested in running and playing a bit of sport, and kind of thinking, well, actually, it doesn't matter that don't think I'm very good at sport, and it's more about what I could get out of it and the benefits. And really over the years, I've started to get more involved with running. And then I think I'm starting to see the differences between men's and women's sport and how women came off. So we know from figures from Sport England now that 1.6 million fewer women than men play sport every week here in the UK. And that's a huge gender gap that we really need to be addressing, because that means there's 1.5 million women every week fewer than men are gaining the health, physical and mental health, social benefits from playing sport that men do. And that's it's really important. It isn't just playing sport for the sake of playing sport. It's a real inequality gap. And for me, the passion for sport is what sport can achieve, what it can do for people's lives and how it can change lives. And that's really why I wanted to get involved, why I joined Women in Sport. It's really closing that gap and really challenging where there's inequality and looking what we can do to improve and transform sport for the benefit of every woman and girl in the UK. So that's why I came on board. And for me, some of the highlights so far, I guess, in terms of sporting highlights that I've really enjoyed while I've been in this role, I don't think I can pick out one thing from Rio, although if I did pick something, it would be watching the Team GB winning gold in the hockey. That was just such an exciting moment. And the fact that for me, for our charity, it was particularly because the 10 o'clock news on BBC was moved just so we could watch, so that they could broadcast a women's sport final on TV. I don't know when that's ever happened before, when the 10 o'clock news has been moved for a women's sport final. And that for me was a real, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't a personal achievement, but it was a real achievement for women's sport, which I think it was really great to see that happening. I don't know whether we would have seen that before. And the reaction to that actual fact, both the win and the fact that the TV had been rescheduled to accommodate it, was something that the public really picked up on social media. And that's another highlight for me, really watching the demand for women's sport that's out there through shows, whether it's like this one or whether it's through social media. People obviously have far more of a voice now than they did in the last 10 years because they have the opportunities through social media. So we can see that people want to see this stuff. They want to see more women's sport on telly. They're telling us that through our research at Women in Sport, that audience figures are going up, even if the coverage isn't going up as fast as we want it to. People want to see it when it's on there. So that, for me, seeing that change and seeing that progress is really what's been the highlight, I think, of working at Women in Sport so far. But we've got a long way to go.
Well, Nicola, I absolutely love your passion, and I love it when people really enjoy what they are doing and they're rewarded out of it. So it's fantastic to hear, Nicola, and obviously we'd love to have other charities talk on Sportuccino related to sport, and I think you're doing great work with Women in Sport, and I want to tell our viewers that if they can get to any of these events, try and help support women in sport, because sport is for everyone. Sport is an amazing thing which can do so much for you, not just for your body, but for your mind as well. So, Nicola, just before we go, just a reminder of how we can follow Women in Sport and how the different hashtags and all the different social media channels, please.
Well, the best way to follow what's going on in Women in Sport, for Women's Sport Week, is to follow the hashtag WSW16. It's not WSW 2016, which is actually World Space Week, which I'm sure is brilliant as well, but not what we're here for. Actually, Women in Sport, we're a charity, and everything we do, every penny we get goes towards helping us to change sport for girls and women as they grow up. And today we've launched a fundraising campaign called Women's Sport Wednesdays. So that is about going out there, doing something, getting involved with sport, doing anything at all on a Wednesday, any Wednesday of the year, and raising money to help change sport for women and girls. If you go to www.womeninsport.org, you can find out about how to raise money for us through Women's Sport Wednesdays. And I'd really like you guys to have a look and see what you think.
Well, we'll definitely put those details on our Twitter page and on our Facebook page for everyone to continue to follow. I really like the idea of Women in Sport Wednesdays. I remember when I went to university, Wednesday was always the day for sport. They give the afternoon off, so I think that's the perfect day for it. All the best with it. Nicola Miller, the Director of Campaigns and Engagement for Women in Sport, thank you so much for your time this morning on Sportuccino.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Great chat there with Nicola Miller. If you want to learn any more about women in sport, we'll have all the details on our website, sportuccino.com.